I thought I was coming to, speak to people, sort of 30, 40 people. I get there on the Friday and I was told it was like 195 or 200 people. And then in ADHD fashion, we was running late.
Do you almost get that analogy of the sort of the dam being burst and broken? You were shackled by your own thoughts to then have that experience, to then almost want to headbutt the horizon to do so much more.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now, I'm here and I'm going to be honest, right? That doesn't mean that inner voice is gone, but it has less power over me.
You've got boundaries around it.
Yeah, it's that face the fear, do it anyway. I mean, in the journey that I've been in recovery from addictions, I studied for 6 years at University of Bath and I left school with no GCSEs, nothing.
You've been very humble about the work you do for other people, but from a kid who was lost in the education system, who ran away from the education system, to now have all those graduate qualifications and turn them into good for other people. Where does your ADHD diagnosis play into this then, James? Because we can see where it plays in the textbook.
And I thought I'll educate myself around effective ways of managing ADHD, strategies, practices, in order to support my son.
James, welcome.
Lovely to be here.
Welcome to the show. Bit of background for you, really, because you don't know James. So James and I connected a while back, and then we held a conference, and we had 200 or 300 people there, and this young man turned up to talk about his story. Full suit, shirt and tie, bought new clothes for it.
Absolutely, dressed becomingly.
Gone for it, and had everybody eating out the palm of his hand when he started talking about your story. And hopefully we'll get some of that covered here.
I remember you getting super excited about it coming the time, and been looking forward to this.
And you offer, I think what you offer is a great insight into your lived experience with your ADHD and everything. And I thought this would be a good platform, another platform for you to sort of get out there and connect with people. Because what I've watched since that conference is your confidence has really grown, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've done a lot more. Let's just talk about that then as a way of opening, if we can. What did that conference give you as a man with ADHD who's had your struggles and challenges over the past? What did you walk out of that conference weekend with? Because you changed at that weekend, didn't you?
Yeah. So, well, quite often for emotional dysregulation, but I thought I was coming to, speak to people, sort of 30, 40 people. I get there on the Friday and I was told it was like 195 or 200 people. And then in ADHD fashion, we was running late. But, the first day, I really did go in on myself, even though I got some really positive feedback. So my anxiety was through the roof, obviously it's a coexisting disorder with ADHD, right? And I was like, right, run. But no, internally, thankfully, I was able to, face the music, so to speak, and deliver what I needed to deliver. But after it, I was like, them limiting beliefs, I know today they're not my voices, they're voices of people that I've grown up around with undiagnosed ADHD. And so I delivered what I needed to, but I literally run out, went back to my room to regulate what was going on for me. And I know what happened, I learnt about it, I spoke to Richard, yourself after, and my mind said, because we had a meal booked for after, and I was like, yeah, don't go. They all think you're this, they think you're that, and it was all in my mind. And I know myself a lot more today. And I was like, right, you are going to the mill, you are going to show up, and better still, you're going to look at the slides that you delivered today, ready to go tomorrow. And I changed the whole presentation in 20 minutes, sent it to the lady that was getting it up on the big screen, and away I went on Saturday and absolutely smashed it.
Well done, you.
Believing in myself, powerful.
Those voices in the head are difficult, aren't they?
Oh,
super difficult to manage.
Yeah, absolutely.
From that moment and having that chat with yourself to then get, I guess, some kind of validation, clearly, which is why Phil's been so keen to get you here.
Yeah.
Is that where the confidence has come from? And my point being, going through that discomfort, battling those voices to then be like, do you know what? I'm coming through.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, as we get into it, you'll hear my journey of where certain things took me to the gutter, so to speak. And yeah, I mean, it's, I mean, since then, it's helped with confidence. It's helped me to face a lot of fears. You know, I mean, delivering to 200 people, you know, staff, and then the next day to staff and people that was attending a conference. And what an honour to be asked at the first conference as well. But I love mixing in outside as well when I had the stall, and, you know, I mean, I developed, not only what I do, I've been doing what I'm doing the last 6 years, but I developed a 12-week Escape the Chaos program for people with ADHD and addictions, or both, because obviously quite often they can coexist. So that propelled me to be more confident in believing in what I'd created.
Love that word propelled. Do you almost get that analogy of the sort of the dam being burst and broken? You were shackled by your own thoughts, to then have that experience, to then almost want to headbutt the horizon to do so much more.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Now, I'm here and I'm going to be honest, right? That doesn't mean that inner voice has gone, but it has less power over me.
You've got boundaries around it.
Yeah, it's that face the fear, do it anyway. You know,
is there one voice that was the loudest? Is there one particular message? Remember what it was? I mean, you still got it now, right? It's still there.
Yeah, you're not good enough. What are you doing here? You know, what are you doing here? You know, I mean, in the journey that I've been in recovery from addictions, you know, I studied for 6 years at University of Bath, and I left school with no GCSEs, nothing. And every module, I opened the laptop, started writing the essay, and my head would be, what are you doing here? You don't deserve to be here. Close the laptop and let these clever people get on with what they need to, right? But it's that resilience, that resistance with no. You know, I had it all my life from school. You know, what's wrong with you? I mean, I was undiagnosed then. You know, I was only diagnosed over 10 years ago. And it's like, I mean, I didn't know what was wrong with me. In fact, there ain't nothing wrong with me. Well, that's just the fact that I think
you were made to feel like you were recycling, I can relate to. Yeah,
absolutely. It was the fact that I was thinking differently, and I was in a world that I didn't understand, but didn't understand me.
Where did you go from a guy that was misunderstood at school, that was made to feel thick, to then into a career side of things? It sounds like at any one time you've hit the bottom. Kind of talk me through those career decisions, if you like, life decisions that you went through with those voices in your head so loud.
Well, I guess they started early. I mean, well, I'm not that old, not that early, you know, but yeah, I mean, you know, just being in school, you know, like the teachers not quite knowing what to do with me, you know, yet, you know, and I was in school, I wanted to learn.
So you were trying, so you were there trying to make it work, but it's not working.
No, far from working. I know now why. Back then I didn't. It was the teaching style. It was the content of what was being delivered. It was like I was connecting there, but I weren't connecting there. It weren't it weren't stimulating me. It wasn't, you know, it weren't setting these electrons off in my brain. Like, you know, I'm talking maths, English, certain subjects that we hear quite often in what I do. And then in secondary school, I'd experienced bullying. I went to an all-boys school. You know, I was the youngest in the year. Again, struggling. So what I did was I started playing truant.
Running away, literally.
Yeah. Not facing the fear of, you know, experiences of the people that were bullying me. I was the youngest in the year. So in fact, I was almost undeveloped anyway. So it was like, but what I found was that I excelled in any subject that was creative. So music, drama, sports, you know, I was excelling, but still, for some reason, I jumped from sport to sport to sport. I got very good, and people that was there, and there was, you know, the PTs, the people that was training me, they were like, you know, you stick with this, James, you're going to go far. But at some point, my mind went, nah, I'm not quite getting anything more out of this. And then I changed to the next thing, and I understood that it was about the beginning of these things. That was what excited me. And then it was like, it just stopped. I mean, the only way I can describe it is it stopped working. Now, in the middle of that, I started using substances from the age of 11. So I started playing truant. I started mixing with others that was taking drugs. You know, quite often you'll hear me say, people say, oh, you know, because when we hear about drugs or substance use with addiction, people quite often will say, oh, talk about stimulants. And they say, oh, James, what drug of choice was you? What did you use? I said, my drug of choice was more. Whatever it is, I want more of it. And if it didn't get me to a place where I wanted to get to, I'll find ways and means to get more, And very soon it got to a place where I lived to use and used to live. It was almost like, I couldn't cope.
No, your coping mechanism.
Talking about that, I've seen you use two very powerful pictures as part of the work you do now with addiction and ADHD, and what we see used is a picture of where you describe at rock bottom. Talk to me about that picture, because I think that gets us into part of the journey, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Well, that was when I was 20 years old, still very young, Phil. I was disowned at 15. I was thrown out of the family home at 15
because
of my behaviour.
So it was a combination
of the
of
harm
things
that I'd caused my mum and my stepfather, and that was never ever my intention to cause people harm. It never was. But when I had a gap when I stopped using, the guilt and shame propelled me into continuing the using of wanting to escape. But it was only temporary. So that was 15. So from 15 to 20, my mum, she'll watch this, and she says quite often when we talk about this subject that she still feels really guilty for making that decision. I'm not for 1 minute saying anyone should make that decision. The most difficult decision for any parent, right? And I say, Mum, you saved my life. Because what you've done was you didn't enable the behaviour. It could have gone any way though, right? But from 15 to 20, I went on an absolute mad one. I got to a place of desperation, the photo that you described, at 20 years old.
20, yeah.
I was in a hostel in Brick Lane in London, 8.5 stone with a black bag. That was my items. And just no one about. The last 2 years of my using in London, I'd been experienced bullying. I was mixing around with the wrong crowd. The people pleasing, no boundaries, just like, if you want it, I'll sort it. Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. Volunteer. Yeah. And I didn't realise that I was in a world of hurt until one day I was looking out the window in this hostel and I just felt lost, empty, alone. And I did. I thought, you know what? Maybe it's time.
Time
to end it. Just finish. Game over.
What got you through that?
Yeah.
I guess in a way, at that time, my real father, had been to a rehab. And I broke down with my mum and my sister. And I said at the time, I think I might have a drug problem. Because I weren't even there yet. Even there, I think I might have a drug problem and I'll experience bullying, but I was so low. And I just I never cried once in my life. I cry at watching TV these days, right? But then I was just so locked off from that emotion. And I broke down and my mum said, just see if you can get in the rehab that your father went through. And at the time, my father was doing well. In the end, alcohol killed my dad 7-8 years ago. But at the time, he was volunteering in his treatment centre. So I thought, great idea, run. That's what I originally thought, run. But I can remember being on the coach at Victoria or Paddington Station, curled up in a ball at the back of this coach, full of fear.
To go to the rehab?
Yeah.
So I'd like to go into the rehab journey for a second, but hopefully we'll get the photo and we can morph that into showing that as part of this. I've seen that photo haunts me because this is the James I know. I didn't know that James. Describe your face and demeanour in that photograph. What does that photograph, how would you describe it?
If there's such a word, soulless.
Yeah. There's nothing behind your eyes.
Soulless, yeah. You don't even have to explain what the photo is about. You can see it in the eyes.
Yeah.
Vaguely. Yeah. Just locked off from everything.
You checked out.
Yeah.
So many people talk about following their father's footsteps. And here's your dad, an addict, you an addict, and you followed his footsteps to the rehab clinic.
Same rehab, same name, James Hansen, and his name's Jimmy Hansen, but his name's James Hansen.
That's an unusual
Yes.
trajectory, isn't it, that you don't hear very often. We talk about ADHD being hereditary and the part that ADHD, hopefully we'll get to explore that in a minute, the part that the ADHD played in the substance abuse. And clearly you would expect in the conversation that your dad's probably neurodivergent.
Undiagnosed, absolutely.
Yeah, and that generation, society let that generation and the generations before down a lot more than we let these down, and we still let people down now. Rehab, then, following in your, not proudly following in your dad's footsteps, I would imagine, because you talk about being rolled up in a ball in the back of the bus with all that fear.
Yeah.
Without going into every morsel of that painful journey, you came out the other side of that clearly.
I did, but not without a battle.
Yeah.
Because I'd not truly accepted the fact of how out of control I was with addiction, certain substances. So, class A's, B's, C's, my mind was like, well, if it's not that, because quite often, my dad was never there. My mum and dad split when I was 3 or 4. So my father weren't there for a long time. His problem was alcohol. So my brain said, if I didn't drink like my dad, because I've been around my father, there'd be tenants on the floor next to him when he woke up. I'd experienced all that. My dad was never there. He was there later on in our life when we was, probably around 8 to 10. But my mum had dropped me off and my older sister to the pub. That was his rendezvous. That was his meeting point for me and my sister. That seemed natural, normal to me until I got older. And then, so he didn't stay sober, but he was volunteering in that rehab at the time, and he was doing really well. Now, in order for me to get a bed in that rehab, because of conflict of interest, he had to give up his voluntary.
Okay.
So, in a roundabout way, he saved my life.
Yeah.
In all honesty, God.
He may not have known he was doing that at the time.
No.
The way you describe it, you weren't ready for accepting that was the journey you were going on either, were you?
No.
But your mum had asked you to do it.
My mum thought that would help. And it did help. But two weeks before I left the treatment centre, I started using again in the treatment centre. Because I thought there's no way I can be outside there and not use something. The plaster. I need the plaster back on, to take the edge off life, even though it isolated me from life. But this is, when you're feeding it, it convinces you of these lies.
So how did you get through that bit then, James?
I started attending mutual aid support groups, if I'm being honest. Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, this is 98, 99, during the war, and I was still using. I was still trying to control it.
Were you fooling yourself?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But at the time I didn't believe I was. I'm not going to say this because it involves language, but when we feed that addict, my experience is it gets stronger in the decision making. Nothing else seems rational. We end up in a place of ambivalence. Sustained talk and change talk. Quite often sustained talk, which is where the denial lies, where we're convincing ourselves to stay in the behaviour. And it seems like a great idea, which is, but the momentum was, I had this guy, I'm going to use these terms for, it's not the terms I use now. I remember being in the treatment centre and this guy used to turn up. I'm hoping he watches this because he was another contributing factor in my journey. He come in and he had a suit. Strange you were saying about suits. He had a suit. I clocked a Mercedes-Benz outside. He come in, he was a very well-spoken, at the time I called posh, right? And he was an executive director of his own business. How things change, right? And he come in and he was trying to encourage people to go to meetings. And I ripped this guy off. I was like, this guy is just disrespectful. I judged him. I was like, I don't want nothing to do with this guy. And later on in my life, after I was finally people pleased and ended up going to one of these meetings, I was only 21 years old. I spent my 21st birthday in this treatment centre. Not many people can say, they remember their 21st birthday, right? And but I just went just to get this guy off my back. But I know now why I pushed him away. It was because he was showing me love. And my mind says that anyone shows me love, they hurt me.
About to exploit you and hurt you.
So I lock off. I'll keep going. I'll tell you whatever you want to hear. That was then.
So how did you get through that last period? You've gone back to using, you're still going through rehab. You've come out. How did you finally squirt yourself out the other end of it clean?
I guess I surrounded myself in the community of people that were trying to get well. And I often say that quite often we can be chameleons. Sometimes that's not good, but sometimes that can actually work.
The masking element.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was around the right people and I didn't even know it.
Right.
And eventually it rubbed off. And I can remember my last night of using was, I was using and I was crying at the same time and still using. And I can remember that voice inside saying, "You're back here again, man." And the next day, I didn't know what it was, but it was just like, I'm not religious or anything like that. I do feel that there's a source of strength that's working in my life and guiding me to where I want to be, where I am right here, right now. And that comes in many, many different forms, right? And I got on my knees the next day and I said, "Look, I can't continue this no more. Whatever's there, just give me that strength just to stay away from that first one today." And that's been over 25 years.
That's self-awareness. This reminds me, we brought up a few times Kit Burks, who filmed here, and she said to us, and she articulated it beautifully, she said, the only time I could actually come out of the sort of bottom and head up was when I actually faced up that I needed to accept that I wanted to help. And that self-awareness comes in. I love the fact you brought people into that as well, because it's so, going back to this picture, which I haven't seen, clearly your lights were out. And I was trying to pick through this when the light came back on, but it feels like it was that flicked it on, but then the people shone to allow you to, and you embraced love. I'm sort of doing this for you, I guess, in content. I want to know the journey, but it feels like that's where you then acceptance and you allow people in. What's the worst that can happen? But you're around good people at that point, whereas previously you're clearly not.
No,
it's nice to bring that back to people, and that that's what joins us. It's why we're all here.
Yeah,
and it sounds like that's a lot of what you do now. Is around people, and you put faith back into humankind again, which had taken you to a place where you were,
So where does your ADHD diagnosis play into this then, James? Because we can see where it plays in the textbook. Where does it play in your life story? How does that chapter start?
What, pre-diagnosed or?
No, when your actual,
Right.
when did you go? When and why did you go and get assessed for ADHD?
Because there's clearly, I want to know
trigger?
what led you to want to find out if you had ADHD.
Well, I think it was around when I was 4 years in recovery. I've got 4 children that have never seen me drink or use drugs, which is an absolute miracle. I've changed the direction of that momentum.
You could be proud of that.
Oh, yeah. They know they can go out, they don't need to use nothing and have a good time.
Yeah.
It's amazing. But around 4 years being in recovery, in sobriety, I was doing regular meetings, I was being of service, I was I'm blowing my anonymity here because the best service for me is when no one knows that you're doing service. And so I was starting meetings in my local area, and there weren't no fellowship with a good friend of mine. And people were gaining access to coming in and recovery. And, we turned the me upside down to we, connection. And I remember, people, we was going to close the door because there weren't many people there, but we'll open the door, eventually they'll come. And in Swindon, there's like 3 to 5 meetings a week, which is amazing. And, but around 4 years in my recovery journey, our second child was born. Me and my ex-wife had 4 kids, and the second child was born. He was born 1 pound 14 ounces. Now I say he now is 21, who now identifies as a she, which is a share for another series. But at the time, I refer to him as a he. he was born £1 14 ounces. He was in hospital from May to October. 3 times we was asked to turn the machine off. He come out of hospital, on oxygen for two years after that, 24 hours a day. Every cold, boom, 3 to 5 days up the hospital. I've never known pain like it in my life. And he was diagnosed with ADHD.
At what age?
Between 6 and 8.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you exactly.
Oh.
But what I do remember is, I embarked on a journey of education. I'm always a great believer, always remain teachable. That's what I've been taught. I've been brought up around some very wise people. And so I embarked on a journey. I studied a 4-year foundation degree in addiction counselling and a 2-year Bachelor of Science honours degree in addiction counselling. I was working full-time. At the time, we had 3 or 4 kids. I can't quite remember. But I was studying comorbidity on one of my last units on a Bachelor of Science honours degree. And he was not long diagnosed then. And I thought, right, well, my passion's addiction. This is the way that I'm going, to try to be there for others. To turn me upside down to we. And so I studied ADHD and addictions. And I thought I'll educate myself around effective ways of managing ADHD, strategies, practices, in order to support my son, who I'm now going to refer to as my daughter. And seeing how she struggled, like through everything, not just through the ADHD lens, but also the coexisting disorders, like sensory deficit disorder, like because she had headphones on in different situations, social events and that, and I should wonder why I get agitated around certain sounds and certain pitches, But to see how she struggled in the meltdowns, I see myself. And then through the education as well, together, connecting, I was like, wow.
So you saw that and then you went and had yourself assessed.
Yep.
Got a diagnosis.
Got a diagnosis.
And did the fog clear for you then a little bit when you look back?
When I got that diagnosis, oh God, such a revelating experience for me.
Yeah.
I don't use the word label. I don't, It was just like another wheel in the hog, but a big wheel in a big cog, in the movement of where I was at in my life. I was 14 years in recovery, clean and sober. And then all of a sudden, they were going to talk to me about medication. I'm like, do you not read my resume? I was really anxious and fearful around that. And in fact, I didn't actually embark on that, what that looked like from an optimal level, an optimal dose for me, for around 2-3 months because of that fear. And so educating myself even more around it and why the medication, what difference it can make, as well as the psychosocial interventions. And then just educating myself around ADHD, and along that, obviously become qualified addictions therapist. And then sort of it all just come together,
Did you start a medication journey?
I did.
And how did that go?
Fantastic.
So I'm going to play that back. I think this is where you were just about to go. Sorry, I think we overspoke each other and I won. Here we've got, there's so much in your story and we've only a few minutes left, but an addict, fearful of medication, educated yourself to the point where you took medication and then you've seen the impact of that. Because there's many a person out there who will think an addict can't take medication and an addict shouldn't take medication, and we would never recommend medication for an addict. As we wind out this, you take medication for your ADHD. That's been positive?
Yeah.
You say that as if...
Of course it is. Why wouldn't it be,
But it's very hard to encapsulate. You've very, without tears, in a very emotional way, you just described your life. And you can't help but be impacted by it, can you?
Well, do you know what? I mean, you brought the med side of things up. That impact, what I was going to say is that all that education piece you went through real, like, personal pain for your child that then becomes about you, to then educate yourself, to then go through clearly the journey that you guys went on where you did a talk to 190 people, to then have an outpouring of people that probably really helped. And that's about all that knowledge from personal experience, but also learned knowledge. To then share this conversation, you're actually helping so many other people. And I guess my point is, I hope you feel some validation from that shuts the voices up in your head and has built that confidence up, because that's what I'm picking up from this. That's what people watching and listening right now can actually get from you, is that piece that you've gone through gives so much to so many other people. And I hope I'm telling you that as well from me to you. Yeah. You know what I mean? That's shared knowledge.
Yeah. We've got to wind out. What would you say to your mum when she watches this?
Thank you. Thank you for making a massive difference in my life and making that very difficult decision that I wouldn't want any parent to make.
I've not met your mum. One day I'd like to. I'll put money on your mum when she watches this back with you. Will be incredibly proud, not only of your journey. I think your journey is a matter of record for you and your family, but actually the strength of articulation that you've got, the way that you can tell your story with an honesty and a humility that is rarely seen, and the fact that you've been very humble about the work you do for other people. But from a kid who was lost in the education system, who ran away from the education system, to now have all those graduate qualifications and turn them into good for other people, to try and stop people going on the journey that nearly killed you. You nearly took your own life. Your mum will be incredibly proud of you. You've challenged her over the years. You've given her a fair job, haven't you?
Absolutely.
You know, but you've come through it together. And I want to say, I'm proud to have been part of the last part of this journey with you. Really proud. And when I said to some of the guys at work that you were coming on this today, they said, please give him our love because he's an amazing man. And to a person, they said that. And there's not one person I think who's met this version of James that wouldn't say that to you. And that's where you need to quieten down your inner chimp, because you are a great man doing great work. And thank you for coming on the show. Brilliant.
Thank you. I appreciate your kind words. Yeah, amazing stuff.
Heartfelt thank you.
Absolute pleasure.
Cheers, James.
Good man.